James at 16 will not be presented this evening, but will return next week at its regular time. Stay tuned now for a special 2-hour What Really Happened to the Class of 65.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. It's the nation's second longest running comic convention. It's Ithacon, April 22nd and 23rd at the Campus Center of Ithaca College. Tickets are just $20, $5 for kids 17 and under. Order tickets now at ithacon.org. Featured guests include the legendary Walt and Louise Simonson, DC comic vets Shelley and Philip Bond, Dean Haspiel, Mike Gold, the classic Spider-Man and Superman writer Roger Stern, Megaton Man's Dom Simpson, Star Trek's DS9 J.G. Hertzler, and many more. This year we'll have amazing comic publishers like Ahoy Comics, Dynamite, A Wave Blue World, and SHP. There'll be cosplay contests, panels, kids' activities, and more. Plus, Ithacon is offering swag bags for the first 200 attendees to buy tickets. These overstuffed swag bags offer over $30 value in comics, books, and more. Join us for Ithacon, April 22nd and 23rd at the Campus Center of Ithaca College. Order tickets now at ithacon.org. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Happy to welcome Cully Hamner back to Word Balloon. Good to see you.
John, how's it going?
Doing all right. Looking forward to seeing you next weekend at C2E2 in Chicago.
Yep.
And I should E1 for people scoring at home. The Ithacon spot. Actually, it is not this weekend coming up. It is the following weekend, same weekend as C2E2. And at Ithaca College, it's going to be a great show. All the guests are still correct. I'm very envious. Martok from DS9, J.G. Hertzler is going to be there, and the great Roger Stern and the Bonds, Shelley and Philip, among others. The Simonsons are going to be there. Walt and Louise. Two good shows, man.
You know, when you said the Bonds for a hot second there, I thought you said the Fonz. And I was like, "Oh, the Fonz."
You ever do a show?
Disappointment, but the Fonz.
Sure. Do you ever do a show with Winkler at a convention?
I've never met him. No.
He, I very briefly at Terrificon one year, I did a panel, and then he had the panel right after ours. And he's a man in his 70s now. God bless him. And he was gonna try and just like get on the stage with like almost like trying to climb on a large horse.
Sure.
Put one leg up on the stage. I'm like, Henry, there's steps right there. Don't kill yourself. And he laughed. And he walked up to us. He's like, "Thank you very much." And I'm like, "Yeah, man." And plus, I mean, good. I'm like, I know you're coming on in a second. I just want to tell you, I really admire your entire career because you probably know, he produced Hollywood Squares, the Tom.
Sightings. Remember that show, Sightings? He produced
MacGyver. He was the producer of MacGyver, which blows my mind. And he's writing those great kids books, and it's nice because they're kind of semi-autobiographical because he had dyslexia, and it's. Hank Zipster has dyslexia.
Let's not forget Barry. He was on Barry.
He was so great at Barry.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the Sandler movies when he shows up in the Sandler and the Kevin James MMA movie. The hell's it called? Oh, it's funny. Here comes the boom. It's a funny.
Barry Winkler gets around, man. It's the longest shark jump ever.
Do you remember? There was a great Western, but it kind of had a weird, like almost Twilight Zone-y vibe. It was called Dead Man's Gun.
No,
each episode, it was an anthology show, and it would follow the trail of this gun through the Old West. And he had one great episode where.
Wait a minute, no, I do remember that.
He's a con man, and he's mistaken for a gunman. Yeah, and it's fantastic. Oh my god, I told him that. I'm like, Dead Man's Gun. He's like, oh, I remember that. I'm like, that was fantastic, man.
Yeah, wow. Man, I totally forgotten about that, but I do remember that. Yeah,
It's you can find it on YouTube, everybody.
I'm sure you find
So,
everything on YouTube.
well, this is true. Well, I wanted to talk to you, Cole. And listen, everybody, if you want to ask questions about comic greatest hits in the past or whatever,
I'll
that's
say
great.
nothing.
He'll say a lot, and he's here for you to answer your questions. But I really wanted to get into a couple of the things that happened to Cully in the last 15 years or so, and that's been the movie adaptations of big books of yours, and certainly
Yeah.
the lobby card for this episode is your depiction of there he is, Ray from Red.
I have somehow become that, actually. Since I did the book, I actually have become that.
You put horn rim glasses on, and actually it could work.
Yeah.
Your face is less craggy than his.
Give it some time. Give it some time.
So, tell me about that. I mean, that's you and Warren Ellis. You make this book for Wildstorm.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was a great, was it 3 issues?
Yeah, 3 issues. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Great punchy story.
Mean story.
Very mean story. Yeah, about like an old CIA guy that, they program these guys to be assassins and killers. And I don't think there's an off switch. And that's kind of the point of the story.
That was one thing that Warren said early on, was that this book was about unexploded ordnance, basically, except the ordnance is people. The unexploded bombs of the 20th century, and that's a pretty apt metaphor. I think that we kind of ran with that. Yeah, it was. What's funny is, like, when they did the movie version, clearly it's not the same. I mean, clearly it became kind of a comedy and kind of a romp, but it still, in its way, still had that theme, about people who are weapons that are kind of put out to pasture,
No question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and again, as much as they changed it, they also gave you a hell of a all-star cast of characters.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember getting like the updates, like they cast what now? Who? It was a lot of that. When they cast, I think when they cast Bruce Willis, so that was when I knew it was going to get made. And it's one of those things where Bruce Willis was not in my head when I was drawing the character, but it's kind of hard to see anybody else now playing him in a weird kind of a way. I mean, when we were doing the book in my head, it was like, taking, equal parts Patrick Stewart and Sean Connery and kind of smashing them together. That was kind of my feel about it. When they first started talking about a movie, not having any idea what they were going to do with it stylistically or anything, my thought was, somebody like Pete Postlewaite would have been great, or
the father in the name of a father, and Mr. Kobayashi in The Usual
Suspects. I just thought, well, he would be great, but it turns out they weren't going to do a straight adaptation. They were going to do a take on it. And I thought that once they decided what they were going to do, you couldn't ask for a better cast than that.
God, Helen Mirren, Brian Cox, good Lord, from Chicago, Malkovich from downstate,
John Malkovich, who was not I think we talked about this before, was not the original choice for that part, or not originally cast, I should say. He may have been one of the early people that they thought about, but the person originally cast for that part was John C. Reilly.
Wow.
And he had a conflict of some sort and couldn't do it. So he stepped out and Malkovich stepped in.
That's interesting. And again, he was, because he certainly made that part his own. I mean, you can't imagine
it would have been totally different. It would have been, I think, probably just as funny and just as great, but it would have been a different character.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. What was it like? When did you know that it was definitely going to be kind of a different spin on the original idea?
When I got a draft of the script, which was probably, God, I have no idea. It was probably right before shooting. I think probably within a few months of them starting to shoot, I got a draft of the script. And I actually, if I remember correctly, it was passed to me kind of under the table. And it wasn't until like we had everything, all the, I's dotted and the T's crossed before they actually could officially show it to me. But yeah, I mean, I remember reading it and going, well, this is a different take. This is certainly a lot funnier than what we did. Because, like I was saying earlier, what we did was a lean, mean kind of a story. There wasn't a lot of humor in it. That said, I mean, they preserve the themes, I think. And like, if you watch like the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of that movie, it's pretty much kind of like the book. Once they get past that attack in the house, then it kind of spins off in its own direction,
Were you concerned ever that, because again, something on paper really, doesn't translate to what we eventually get visually and everything. And were you like, I don't know, man?
I mean, not really, because I think my feeling was, if you want the book, it's there. And one thing that the movie did for the book was it made sure that the book was in print. So anybody who wanted to read what we did could get it easily. I mean, it's kind of a hard question. Would I like to see a straight adaptation of the book? I mean, yeah, sure. Who wouldn't? I mean, I'd like to see like a faithful version of it. I don't know if I think that the Red movies have been on pretty much constantly since it came out, like on cable and stuff.
Yes.
So I don't know if people would accept it as Red. You know what I mean? It's kind of like how the popular conception of like the Bond movies is one thing. The books are a completely other thing. And, they flirt with the idea of trying to get them closer to the books here and there, but there's still certain things that are just movie creations of that character that you have to have in there. So it's like, I don't know if you could do a non-humorous version of the book at this point.
Interesting.
Probably, maybe, I don't know.
Well, and again, you might have to call it something else.
Well, yeah, exactly.
James says J.K. Simmons would have been a great Frank. I agree.
Yeah. Actually, he would have been great. Well, and I always have to point this out. Like in the book, his name is Paul. The movie version is Frank Moses. The comic version is Paul Moses, which is why when I did the sort of prequel that I did when the movie came out, I did a one shot, and it sort of played around with the idea of like of how he became kind of put out to pasture in the first place, and I had him using an alias of the name was Bruno Frank, and Frank was supposed to be like a tribute to what was going on in the movie. Bruno was the nickname of Bruce Willis, so in that book he's known as Bruno Frank. I just wanted to introduce the idea that this guy's probably used many names. So maybe Paul Moses is his real name. Maybe it's not. Maybe Frank Moses is his real name. Maybe it's not. Who knows?
That's great. Frank Bruno, if you juxtapose that, Frank Bruno was a fantastic British heavyweight boxer.
There you go.
In the 90s, absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny is like, I'll tell you who I saw that was like later on, that was like a perfect physical match was I remember I went and saw the movie Lincoln. And at the very end of it, Tommy Lee Jones' character, when he goes home after they take the vote and they win passage of the law, and he goes home to his wife, who is black, who's a free black, and he takes his wig off, and he's just bald, and I was like, "Holy crap! That's Paul Moses right there." Go look up a picture of him online in that part, and I was like, it looks so much like what I drew. It's not even funny.
That's fantastic, and I can totally see that as far as casting and everything. Yeah, that's great.
But the thing is in the book, and a lot of people don't get this either, Paul Moses is British.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very subtle, but the way Warren wrote him, he's a British expat who's like working for the CIA.
Did you ever talk to Warren about the movies?
Oh yeah, we've talked lots of times about the movies. Yeah.
What was? I mean, again, forgive me for not having Warren on to get his opinion.
I can't speak for him, but I felt like his view of it was the same as me, and he's written about it. I mean, like that he felt that the core themes were intact, and it was a different take, but he liked the take that they had, and it was all good. And like I said, you can get our book anytime you want. Actually, I believe it's possible it's out of print now. I have to check on that with DC. Actually,
When they collected the 3 issues of the Wildstorm thing, did they include your prequel as well in the trade?
No, and I've always wanted them to do that. I've actually always wanted to do like a I don't know if you call it like an absolute or whatever you would call that, but a hardback that has the prequel and then the 3 issues plus whatever supplementary material in it. I always thought that would have been a good package. Maybe that'll happen someday. Who knows?
Do you still have character studies process pages and things that would fill that up?
Yeah. I've got like folders full of it.
That's awesome. Binders of Red. Yes.
I've also got a lot of material from when on the second Red movie, I worked with Method Studios on creating the animated credit sequence, the opening credit sequence. So I've got all my like originals from that. I've got like all sorts of process stuff. I need to scan it. Honestly, that's what I need to do. Especially because there's I don't want to tell tales out of school, but there's some activity around doing like some art of books for me, basically.
Hey, that's great, man.
Yeah. That's not an official announcement. We don't have dates. I don't want to say who it's coming from, but looking pretty good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well deserved. That's wonderful to hear, man. Definitely. And again, I'll remind people as we talk about Red, and we'll get into the Blue Beetle movie in a bit. If there are any other comic questions for Cully, happy to talk about whatever anybody else wants to talk about. But I have an agenda tonight, and I want to talk about the Red movies, and I want to talk about Blue Beetle. How about were you at the premieres? Did you do any of the red carpet stuff?
I did Red. There actually was not an official premiere for Blue Beetle because it was during the strike.
Well, but was it for both movies or just the first movie for Red?
I went to both Red premieres. Yeah.
Go on. Yeah.
That was pretty fun. I'd never done anything like that at that point. So, we got all dolled up and we walked the red carpet and all that stuff. I met, and I got to do interviews on that was pretty cool. You can actually find, you look up like whatever these wire services are, you can find pictures from it, which is a little weird. And I, had a good time, and it was kind of weird because I remember at the second premiere, which was in Westwood, the first premiere was at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
Wow. Beautiful.
The second premiere was in Westwood, and they had like a vacant lot set aside next door for the party afterwards. And they were on the screen, they were projecting the animated opening credit sequence, like of all the artwork I did and everything. And I just remember looking around and going, none of these people have any idea, A, that I did all that, and B, that probably that has anything to do with the movie at all. I was at a premiere. I had guests with me, but I didn't have a table or anything like that. So it was like, all the stars, had their own kind of like little roped off kind of table areas. And a few of them knew me. Because I did not go to the set on Red 2, but I spent a week there on the first one. So Bruce knew me, a couple of the others, remembered me, and that was pretty cool.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What was Bruce like back then?
He was real nice. What's funny about him is that he, I get the impression, and this is before I kind of really knew what happens on a film set when, somebody's there and they're working and they're trying to concentrate and all that. But, there were, he was nice. He'd joke around a little bit here and there. Every time I saw him, I've got a friend that loves this. Like he would always say, like you and I, we got to have sunscreen, right? First day I was there, the first thing he did when he was introduced to me was he came over and gave me a pack of Smarties, like a little candy, and I had somebody ask me if they were like, you saved it, right? I'm like, I ate that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, there's Smarties.
I wanted his power. But no, that was pretty cool. Everybody was nice. Some of them I didn't meet until we did the press day in San Diego. Like Helen Mirren, I met her at the press day. That's the reaction everybody has. It was the reaction that I had because she was so nice and so lovely and so beautiful. Carl Urban was cool. Everybody was cool.
That's good to hear, man. Yeah. And Patrick Wilson.
Patrick Wilson.
Wasn't he in? Well, yeah, I think he was one of the Maybe it was Urban. Maybe I'm conflating. But wasn't Patrick Wilson one of the CIA guys that was after the guy who played Night Owl in Watchmen?
Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. I don't remember him being in the movie.
I could be wrong.
Carl Urban was the main guy who was after.
All right, then I am conflating. Carl
The guy
Urban.
that played the vice president was the guy that played Doctor Doom in the Fantastic Four movie.
Oh yeah.
His name escapes
Absolutely.
me at the moment. Sorry, if you're watching, which I know he probably is.
Yeah, of course, massive word balloon fan. Clearly. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, good Lord, you and I are massive Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
And probably the brightest part of the JJ movies is Carl Urban doing his DeForest Kelly imitation.
Oh yeah, totally.
Perfect. You ever see his Dread movie?
Oh, I love his Dread movie. That's like the best adaptation of Dread that I've seen.
Completely agree.
I don't know. I wish that were more successful, and I wish we had gotten more of it.
I agree. I know. I think it was when I was talking to Pat about it. That they were developing a Dread.
No,
TV.
I remember they were doing a Mega City One, like a TV series that he was supposed to recur in, and it never happened. But yeah, that would have been extremely cool. I remember, because what I liked about that movie is that it was like a really good B movie. You know what I mean? Like, it was violent and everything, but it was like just a really solid 80s B movie. That's what I liked about it.
No, I totally agree.
Really well done.
Good comment from James. What action movie staples do you think is impossible to do in comics? I love car chases in comics. It's hard to justify the issue price. That's funny. Before you answer, Gene Colan did that great Captain America sequence where the Red Skull and Captain America were in a car chase.
Yeah.
And Stan complained about it. There's too many pages of this. And Gene, in my interview with him, said he was inspired by Bullet, the Steve McQueen movie.
Like the car chase movie.
Exactly.
I don't know. I feel like comics and movies have some common vocabulary but different rules, and I feel like it's possible to do a good car chase sequence in a movie in a comic, but the problem with it is that you're talking about the difference between moving images and static images.
Sure.
And with a moving image, the sheer movement of it and the sound and the music and everything can hold your attention a lot longer than what a comic book does, which is sort of causing your mind to sort of simulate that sort of thing, but it's like it can't really hold you that long. So it's not a good idea to do, you watch Bullet, it's like 15 minutes, 20 minutes of car chases, whatever it is. You can't do that. You can't do like 30 pages of car chase and have people, be interested in it. So you're talking like 2 pages, sure. 3, 4, something like that. Great. But, and I've done car chases in comics, and it can be done. Anything can be done in comics. You just have to do it in an interesting way, and you have to not be long-winded about it. I love courtroom dramas. I've always wanted to try to do an effective courtroom drama in a comic. I haven't done it yet. Maybe one of these days, but there are lots of movie conventions that I think are translatable. You just have to forget about movie rules and transpose the comics rules to them.
God, you're making me think now. I'd like to go back and revisit the Trial of the Flash, that last great Carrie Bates.
Oh yeah.
In the Flash, monthly, and because they were, that was
that when Iris was murdered?
Yes.
I remember that very.
And
they
accused Barry of or the Flash of killing her, and God, and sadly, and I had forgotten about this. It wasn't even a monthly anymore. I think it was like 8 times a year.
And it went like bi-monthly or something like that. Yeah,
and it went on forever. Jeff Johns, obviously massive Flash fan and massive Carrie Bates fan.
Yeah,
and he and I have spent hours talking about the Trial of the Flash.
Good stuff. Alex Sabiak drew a lot of that. Carmine Infantino drew a lot.
Carmine did. Yep. I forgot Alex drew part of that. That's
Alex,
great.
I was disappointed when Alex left, actually, because he was what got me reading the book. Really, because I used to read the Flash when Irv Novick was doing it, and
sure,
drifted out of it, and then when Alex was doing it, I was like, oh, I like this guy's work, and I started reading it again, and then
Alex he's vastly underrated. Vastly.
Super.
I have Right behind me here, you can see it blurry because nobody needs to see all the junk that I have in my apartment. But those are two Spider-Man dailies, and
No, wow.
Alex was the inker over Stan's brother,
Larry
uh,
Lieber.
Larry Lieber. Yeah,
Yeah.
Stan wrote the scripts. Larry did the pencils, but Alex did the finishes and stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, they're fantastic. I bought them from Alex. They're amazing. That, and
That's
I asked him. I always get him to do sketch cards for me, and I asked him to do a classic, a Crimson Avenger in the superhero suit, not the fedora, not the Green Hornet looking one,
right.
but really more the classic superhero with the little fin
Cool.
on top.
A little thin, yeah.
Perfect, letter perfect. So yeah, he's one of my favorite Golden Age characters. So
That's cool.
James says Gunsmith Cats had great car chases, but it's a manga, so 40 pages out of a 200-page book is less than a big deal.
Is, since American comics aren't going to be 200 pages, it's like, you have to like sort of, you can't do 40 pages of a car chase. You can do 4 pages of a car chase.
Did you ever back to Red to wrap things up with Red? Did you ever talk to the director about his choices and as far as visuals? And
we didn't dig deep on his choices, but what I thought, the director was very nice. The two movies had 2 different directors. The first director was Robert Schwenke, who was a German director, and he was very very nice, very kind of pleased to have me on the set there. He wanted to show me everything. And, of course, this could have been totally engineered. It could have been a plant or whatever, but there were copies of the book on the set.
Oh, nice.
All of the set chairs had my art on them and all that kind of stuff. That was pretty cool. They actually, you can't really see it here, but I've got a director's chair behind me they made me a back for it with my name on it. So I've got a director's chair. So that's cool. Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish your thought. Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask if Bruce talked to you at all about what
No, it was really weird. I mean, I wasn't there to like sort of police what they were doing, and they kind of didn't feel like, they were doing such a different take. I don't think that they were really thinking about it in terms of, what were you thinking when you did this scene or whatever? Because except for that, like I said, the first like 15 minutes of the movie, scenes that I drew or were part of creating were not in the movie. It was spun off on its own kind of a different thing.
Sure.
Now he did point out a couple of times that there were shots in the movie where he would say, this shot right here, and he would show me a scene from the book, is kind of inspired by this shot you drew right here. So there were like, I think maybe some influences here and there, but they were very subtle. Not the sort of thing that you would, where you'd look at like the Sin City movies, and you'd go, well, those are like Frank Miller panels come to life.
100%.
Like that, because it wasn't that kind of a book. I mean, there was no costume, there was no. There was my style as an artist, but there really wasn't like a, like a thing to hang your hat on, the way some other books are.
Well, and as you say, as the Sin City example, Rodriguez really made an effort for it visually to look like the comic, which I love about both the Sin City films, and I think they're of their time.
Yeah,
I think they are very interesting adaptations.
I do think that you find more of a willingness nowadays in film adaptations of comics to have it look like the comic, or like to do certain shots that look like the comic or whatever. I think there's probably more of a willingness to do that now. I don't know. This seems like there's a little bit more respect for the medium than there was.
I could not agree more, man. Honestly, I started Word Balloon, first of all, to be a movie documentary. Yeah. And my video guy kind of flaked out on the project. So I had all these great interviews, and I just chose to, well, no disrespect to him. He was busy doing, trying to make a living making public television at the time. So I respect that. But by the same token, I had these great interviews. And so I just took the audio and created Word Balloon. But it really was on the strength of Road to Perdition. And
a lot of people don't realize, the normals don't realize that those are comic book movies.
Yep.
Road to Perdition, or what was the one that had Ed Harris and Oh God,
History of Violence, maybe.
History of Violence. Yeah,
The guy from God damn it, Green Book and Eastern Promises. I forget the guy's name. Great actor.
yeah.
He's the weapons officer in Crimson Tide. Weps.
Oh yeah. Trying to remember his name. He was in Lord of the Rings. He was,
Yes.
Why are we blanking on his name? Help us
Because
out.
we're old and stupid. That's why.
Thanks,
Someone
John.
in the chat,
Thanks for including me in your little club of being old and stupid.
Yeah, someone in the chat's gonna either James or somebody else watching right now. By the way, a lot of people watching. I'm really appreciative of how many people are watching. So that's great to see. But yeah, no, he's a terrific actor. Can't remember his name, but you're right, man. No, these people, the normies, don't know that these are great comic book things. And again, that's kind of why I got inspired. And I'm like, hey, guess what, everybody? Oh yes, Vigo. Yes,
Viggo Mortensen. Yes, Viggo Mortensen.
Michael.
Thank you.
Good job.
All we needed was a prompt.
Absolutely, man. No, you guys are great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he's great. I love Vigo. Everything he does, he's amazing. What's the name? I never heard that name prior to Ghostbusters 2. He's Vigo. But yeah, I mean, that was my thought. I'm like, I don't know how to break it to the normies, but a lot of these great Hollywood movies that are getting so much respect are based on comics, and especially History of Violence and Road to Perdition, that was just straight up people in suits. They weren't superhero movies. But then Batman Begins happened as well.
Sure.
And, Spider-Man was only a couple of years earlier. But yeah, I really felt like that kind of helped and Ghost World. Everyone forgets that, that was a Daniel Clode.
Totally.
Yeah, man. So no, I mean, that was, to me, it really is one of the more significant things that happened in the last 20, 25 years in terms of the comic culture, was the respect that was coming from Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, kind of weird. Out of all the things that Warren had done, you would have thought that they would have picked something bigger. You would have thought there would have been an Authority movie or just something else before that. Because I remember saying to him, I'm like, out of all the stuff that you've done, does it kind of freak you out that Red is the one that got made into a movie first? And he was like, yeah, kind of,
Well, but also
he was appreciative, but I mean, it is a bizarre choice,
But also, and Wildstorm was a great representative of this as a publisher. It was part of that revival of, hey, guess what? We could do good crime comics and good action comics and not need the tights to make them interesting stories.
It was all an experiment. Like he had decided to do a bunch of 3-issue series, and he did one with Paul Gulacy, and he did one with Amanda Connor, and he so on and so forth. And it was a bunch of cool little series, and I think maybe they were structured in such a way that didn't really take into account like doing a trade, because that wasn't really, they were trades at the time, but it wasn't really considered part of the marketing the way it is now. Nowadays, you take that into account. Like, well, this many pages, you want to fill out a trade, you do this many issues.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, agreed. Absolutely, man. Let's move on, and here we'll get into another movie adaptation, a character you co-created, Jaime Hernandez and the Blue Beetle.
Jaime Hernandez? Is that what you just said?
I did it. Jaime Reyes, right? I'm an idiot.
Yes.
Jaime Hernandez, I believe, is a boxer.
Jaime Hernandez.
No, Jaime Hernandez, the cartoonist. I'm an idiot.
I think he would take issue with your characterization, John.
My apologies to the great Jaime Hernandez, the man of love and rockets.
A little before my time.
Him and Berto, absolutely, man. They're great guys. I've had the pleasure. Shame on me. I do that all the time. I do.
No, I know you do.
So Blue Beetle is a bit of a different animal as far as the movie adaptation.
Yeah.
Because it was made to be initially a television movie for streaming for Max. And I don't know where in the process they decided to release it as a theatrical thing.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't have any insight into that. That happened. This was a very different kind of a process, because it's not a creator-owned property. It's like I don't own Jaime Reyes or Jaime Hernandez. I don't own Blue Beetle. And they didn't. I mean, nobody asked me. But they. I just remember hearing rumblings right around the time that they right before they announced a director. When they announced Angel as the director of the movie, and I remember actually saying to a guy named Humberto Gonzalez, who's like you know who he is, yeah, he's a movie reporter guy, because he had contacted me to ask me if I knew anything about it, and I was like, dude, you're telling me what I don't know. I haven't heard this yet, and we were sort of chatting about it, and I remember saying to him, you know who they ought to get? They ought to get that kid from Cobra Kai. And this is like months before they announced him. So clearly I'm not the only person that thought that, because apparently Angel was like, there's nobody else. He's the dude I want to do it. And he got it and he nailed it. I mean, man, you want to talk about not even in the costume, just him feeling like he walked out of my head. I mean, he just nailed it. He was perfect. It's one of those weird things when you see somebody who is like, he walks in the room and you're like, okay, well, Patrick Stewart, you're Professor X. There's just no, I remember when they cast Robert Downey Jr. and like, I remember thinking, perfect, absolutely perfect. Put a beard on him, go, and he was one of those where I was just like, yeah, there's just nobody else.
That's great. I'm sure you saw, there was a proof of concept video that was kind of making the rounds.
Oh yeah.
And I want to say it was near the end of when Smallville was still on the air for the CW.
That didn't have anything to do with the movie. That was yeah. No, I did see that. That was, I think, when they were talking about spinning it off as a TV show. That was like, I don't know, probably mid 2000s, like the first decade of the century. But yeah, I mean, I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking, like, well, that's a little clunky, but what are you going to do? It's television, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But I remember seeing early stuff from the movie, because oddly enough, they did clue me into a lot of stuff early on. They were sending me concept stuff, and mainly because DC wanted me to do a cover for that was going to be part of a movie tie-in thing, which I did. So I saw a lot of, I had to get sort of read into like all the design stuff, and I had to have a code and like all the security stuff. So I saw a lot of that stuff early on, but actually I had a mole on the set, which is, and this is a funny story. My old roommate was a guy named Chris Donio,
okay.
He used to be my roommate back in the 90s. Okay. He and I have been friends for decades at this point. When I got Blue Beetle, there's a character in there named Paco, who's like Jaime's friend. Jaime and Brenda and Paco are like the three kind of main kid characters. And I designed Paco to look like Chris. Chris was my model for Paco. So shoot forward a couple of decades. And Chris is a specialty costumer who works on Marvel and DC movies a lot. And he's like, guess what? I'm going to be working on Blue Beetle. And I was like, no shit. Really? You're going to be working on Blue Beetle, right? And so he didn't send me anything, but he showed me a couple of things on his phone to give me a glimpse. He's like, you're going to be real happy with the costume in this movie. You're going to be very happy. And actually, at one point he had contacted me kind of under the table, basically to say, hey, do you have your original kind of concept sheets so that I can give them to the costume designer, because she'd like to see them? And I was like, sure. So I sent him that, and I'm assuming that she saw them, because I had full turnarounds and like all this stuff. And I mean, like the movie suit obviously is more detailed than what I drew, but they pretty well nailed it. That's a situation where I, unlike Red, where I was like, that is clearly what I drew and came up with and designed. And yeah, that was real cool.
And it's a complicated costume too. Both, I would imagine, and you tell me, to design it for the comic, but even more so for the film.
That's one thing I'm kind of proud of in doing a superhero costume design, to me, a really good one, it bears interpretation well. So that what you have on the screen right there, that's the Scott Collins version of the costume. That's not my version of the
I
character.
beg your pardon. I apologize.
But it's my drawing. I did that cover, but like,
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right.
yeah,
At least it's your art.
that design is his version of it. He did his kind of like a whole different version of it. And I think it's cool that even if people stick to the basics of my design, there's a lot of room to play with it. Much like, everybody's got their own Batman, everybody's got their own Superman, everybody's got their own Blue Beetle, which is pretty cool. And that just says to me that it was a strong design to start with.
You did that 7th issue recently of Blue Beetle. That was kind of an homage to really the history of the character. And I had the writer on. I forget the writer's name. Forgive me.
Josh Trujillo.
Yeah. Josh Trujillo. Absolutely. Yeah. And man, I got to tell you, because I wasn't reading it until I had to do the prep work to talk to Josh.
Actually, you know what? I popped up in the comments when he was on, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
And truly, man, I thought it was great. And I do love how much Josh honored the entire legacy, because as you know, I'm a massive sucker for Dan Garrett. The original Beetle. I don't know. Well, first of all, I have an affinity for Golden Age characters anyway, and even that original Victor Fox design of Fox Comics of the original Blue Beetle and stuff. Yeah. I love it, and but yeah, I appreciated that, and even in the movie, I got to say it was nice that there was a nod to Dan, and certainly a nod to Ted Kord as well.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. They really kind of like made sure that that fans of every Blue Beetle, kind of got a little bit of a nod, a little touch, Yeah.
No, I thought so too, man.
Very cool. And if for some reason they end up doing another one, you'll probably see Ted Kord in it. And they made that fairly clear, And what's funny is, a lot was made over the fact that the movie did not do as well in theaters as it maybe they wanted it to. There were a lot of factors, I think that had a lot to do with that. I mean, I think that there was a strike. They couldn't promote it. B, there was a hurricane happening in the biggest film market at the time in LA when it opened. There were a lot of little factors like that, but it did great on streaming. And it's one of those things where that's happened before, where a movie didn't do well in theaters, but it did great in home video or in streaming or whatever. And they end up doing another one on the basis of that, because there's clearly a hunger for it. So they try again. So I'm not saying that there is or there isn't going to be one. I'm saying that you're going to see the character again. You're going to see Xolo as Jaime again. I feel fairly sure of that. James Gunn has been very clear and open about that. I think there's a chance you might even see another Blue Beetle film at some point. You never know.
I hear you, man. And in fact, just that idea of a movie not doing as well as they hoped in the theaters, but finding its audience on home video of some sort. I go back to Two Guns, the Stephen Grant written Boom book. Yeah. And that movie should have been, as I told Stephen and I told Ross Ritchie of Boom many, many times, if that movie had come out 10 years earlier, it would have been a summer movie hit that would have run for months. You had Denzel, you had Mark Wahlberg, you had, again, another fantastic cast up and down, much like Red. And for whatever reasons, it just kind of came and went in the theaters, found its audience on DVD and cable. And so, I mean, it does have, my favorite, and it's not a superhero movie, Eddie and the Cruisers from the 80s. And it was because of the soundtrack. And everyone loving this. John Cafferty, who had this great Bruce Springsteen kind of sound to his band and his vocals. Yeah. It's like, what the hell is that? And this stupid throwaway Michael Pare movie that was made in Canada, dirt cheap, but a still fun story, totally found its audience on cable, and it became an enduring classic.
There are a lot of factors beyond just box office that go into sometimes greenlighting a sequel,
Or it's the success of a movie in general. William Friedkin, the great director who we lost last year, one of my favorite quotes of him, he's like, for a movie to be a hit, 1,000 things need to go right. And
Yeah,
he goes, it's not just casting, it's not just writing, it's not just the performance and everything. He goes, there's a hell of a lot. And yes, good Lord, John Carter should have been a much bigger movie, but they didn't know how to market it. Yeah.
Or a more recent example would be I thought Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was good. I don't know why it tanked. It makes no sense to me.
Well, man, again, I think, and this is a problem I think in general in Hollywood right now, where they don't really know what the hell to make. I think it was kind of generational. As much as I don't know how well the current Roadhouse movie with Jake Gyllenhaal is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard about it, I'm like, why? And everyone's like, well, hey, the Patrick Swayze one is on TV all the time. I'm like, yes, it's on TV. And a lot of generations beyond the initial one that saw it in the theaters, it's dads showing their sons or granddads showing their grandsons. And I'm like, and it's a TV thing. I'm like, as much as Paul, I forget the filmmaker that wanted it to be a big a screen, movie for the screen. I'm like, I don't know if that's the right place for it to be, because it's like, I don't know, it was a Patrick Dempsey throwaway cheese ball. Patrick Swayze. Yeah. See, I keep doing it. See, I mean, you're not alone. You see, but it was a Swayze vehicle. I mean, a lot of movies are vehicles for the actors, and then they, how do they do, or when they try to remake it, and it's like, I'm sorry, man, that was a Jimmy Stewart movie. I love Tom Hanks, but he's not, and as great as, I mean, Tom Hanks is as close as you're going to come to a Jimmy Stewart in this modern era, but it's like, sometimes when they remade Flight of the Phoenix, speaking of Jimmy Stewart, great movie, great movie. And I love Dennis Quaid, and it was a decent cast in the remake, but it's like, it does not have the punch of Richard Attenborough and Jimmy Stewart. Oh, well, how the hell do we make this thing work? I mean, you miss that Jimmy Stewart thing. Same with God. I liked True Grit with the remake. Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was okay, but it's not. I mean, God damn it, man!
I'm gonna like speak a heresy here, but I actually like the remake better.
And I can appreciate that as a more rough, classic Western that really kind of evokes that thing.
Sometimes remakes are better. Look at Ocean's 11.
I'll fight you to the mat on that one. I mean, I think
you're a Sinatra guy. I know,
well, but also they really are different movies, and I like the remake too. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah,
but yeah, man, again, it's ring a ding ding. It's the goddamn Rat Pack, and they do their, and who the secret weapon of the remake is Carl Reiner, of course.
Yeah,
he's brilliant in that.
I loved Elliot Gould in that movie.
Absolutely, man.
When I was doing this a little bit off the subject, when I was doing those Mr. Fix-It covers just recently for the Peter David series, the first cover like that I did was like basically the Joe Fix-It, the Hulk, standing in front of a pool in Vegas, and the original sketch that I did, I had him wearing an open robe and those big glasses and smoking a cigar like Elliot Gould.
I like Elliot Gould.
And they were like, this is great, but he's got to be wearing the suit. He just has to. And I was like, oh, all right. So I drew him in the suit. But if I might post a sketch one of these days, because I've got the sketch of him basically dressed as Elliot Gould in Ocean's 11. I really wanted
Joe Fix-It. That's great.
Him as Joe Fix-It.
That's beautiful, man. Truly, I don't know what inspired poor Peter, man. I just talked to who did I just talk to about Peter? Michael Jan Friedman, because he's part of that Crazy Eights group of writers.
Yeah.
Peter and Mike are in, and God, I really hope Peter's able to make a full recovery, because I know he's still kind of going through the process of recovery and stuff, and that's rough, because he really is one of my favorite writers. And Joe Fix-It, God, what a brilliant idea to do that kind of iteration of the Hulk.
I always loved Joe Fix-It. When they asked me to do that, I was like, yeah, I'll totally do that.
That's outstanding.
I love that original, run with Joe Fix-It.
Oh, 100%, man. Again, it was so surprising.
Jeff Purvis was the artist of that.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. What happened to
Again,
him? I used to love his stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. And was it McFarlane that did the covers? I forget who did the
Yeah,
cover.
I think so. Well, I mean, actually, I think Purvis. I think McFarlane was the artist on the book for a little while, and then Purvis took over for him.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Because
Yeah,
I think McFarlane left to do his adjectiveless Spider-Man book or so. I don't know. I could be mixing up my times. It was like a long time ago, but yeah, that's what I remember anyway.
No, and good, and I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up, Cole, because truly, that's a terrific run you had in the update story
Thank you.
with Spider-Man and Joe. I love that story. I love that story. Michael says just joining the show. I love Cully's work. His art looks like no one else's. Absolutely,
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate
Very
that.
cool. Absolutely.
I endeavor to look like me. That's because it's funny is like I know I've known a lot of artists. A lot of times he'll keep other artists' work out, when they're working, not to rip them off, but just as inspiration. I've never done that. I'm just not somebody that does that. I would find it distracting and intimidating, and I just got to do my thing. I guess I don't know.
Hey, rightfully so.
I appreciate that.
Chem Dog reminds us that Todd went from Incredible Hulk to his great run.
Okay.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I know I was mixed up somehow. But amazing is like where he really got huge. Right?
Oh God, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. My God, yes. Now they never made a movie, as I know, or television adaptation of this, but and of course there's the original version, but I'm surprised that no one has done a television or film version.
Look, you never know.
That's the question.
It could happen.
Sure. The closest we got, I think, at least that kind of no-face character was when Ozymandias in the Watchmen movie, when he kills the comedian, has a no-face kind of
thing. There was that. I remember that there was a character, actually, I think called No Face in the Dick Tracy movie. Wasn't there?
Oh, I don't remember that. It wouldn't surprise me, given that that's the kind of thing that Chet Gould would come up with.
There's a character in the Dark Knight, I think, that is a similar character to Renee Montoya, that I sort of suspect that maybe at some point was Renee Montoya, and they ended up changing the character name because they didn't want to,
pay Greg and
Well, they probably wanted to use the character somewhere else or something. I don't know, but it's funny. It's like I feel a certain amount of proprietary pride in Renee. I didn't create Renee. I am one of many artists who's drawn Renee, but I felt like when Greg and I did our version of Renee, we did a very specific thing that was unlike what Greg had done with other artists. And I really wish that, like, when we see that character again, that the only thing that it doesn't, I'm not mad about it, but I kind of wish that they would sort of preserve the look that I gave her, because I felt like it was very singular, very, very specific to her. I wanted her to have a sleeker look than a biker look that she was having in kind of earlier iterations, and that's perfectly valid. I just wanted her to have that kind of, what I always liked about The Question, because I grew up on The Question, and especially the O'Neill Callan version. Wanted her to have the hat, but I wanted her to have a suit. I wanted to get rid of the long hair and have her have shorter hair. And, I just wanted her to have that kind of like living kind of graphic look. And I wish that people would pick that up and run with that more. Every time I've gone back to the character, and I have a couple of times, I try to maintain that look. When we did the Convergence stuff, which may be at this point the best stuff that Greg and I ever did together, I think. We may beat it at some point. But that, I'm really proud of those two books. And, I got to draw Renee. She wasn't The Question, but I got to draw Renee in a Black Mass special that Tom Taylor and I did. That was a lot of fun. I had to kind of split the difference because they were like, well, you got to give her the long hair because she's got long hair right now. So I was like, I'll make it longer, but I'm not going to have this like down her back thing. I'm not going to do it.
I respect that.
Sort of shoulder length, hair,
James,
splitting the difference.
James says, I think because she was a dirty cop, they didn't want that
right.
thing.
In Dark Knight. Yeah.
No, I really, the trajectory of Renee has always been amazing to me. And I really loved her complicated relationship with Harvey Dent as well. And God, I thought that was amazing. Oh, Alex, nice comment. The question by Cully is one of my favorite
nice.
in my convention sketchbooks. Very cool.
What a lot of people don't know is there was a period right around 2018 or so, that I was going to do a question series, a 10-issue question series. And originally it was going to be Greg and I doing it. And for whatever reason, Greg didn't do it. He couldn't do it or whatever. I can't really remember why Greg stepped off of it. And my thing was, I'm not going to do Renee with a writer other than Greg. I'm not going to do the question. Cheated that a little bit in the Black Mass special with Tom, because she was never the question in the book, right? She made her appearance, but it was as Renee.
Got it.
But there was a 10-issue series that I was going to do with Greg, and Greg stepped off of it. And I remember DiDio asking me, well, like, who do you want to write it? And I'm like, well, Greg. Can't do it without Greg. And he's like, well, anybody else? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, what if you wrote it? And I was like, I would write it if Greg gave me his blessing, which he did. And so I was doing this with I was co-writing it with Doug Wagner. I was a good friend. Doug does plastic and a lot of really cool books for 12 gauge, and has written some stuff for DC and Marvel here and there, and a good friend of mine. And he was helping me on it because I had never written a book this large before. I'd written a few stories here and there. So we set about doing that, and it ended up kind of getting lost in the shuffle with like a lot of different things that were happening. But we wrote like an outline or a plot for like 10 issues, and we have 2 fully drawn issues that no one has ever seen. Those also might end up in an Art of book.
That'd be great. Outstanding.
Yeah, you might get to see that stuff. And I think it's some of my best, it's some of my best question stuff.
Wow.
So, maybe somebody see it.
Did you ever get to talk to Denny about the question, O'Neill?
Not much. I talked to Denny, at a convention here and there, maybe once or twice on the phone. Actually, we tried to get Denny to write some stuff for 12 gauge 20 years ago. He agreed, but, nothing really ever came of it. But, Denny, I was not close to Denny or anything. Actually, my friend Brian Stelfreeze was a lot closer to Denny than I was. I mean, I was an acquaintance basically. Greg was very, very close to Denny. The character of Tot, the way I drew him in the book, was sort of a tribute to Denny, although Denny didn't look like that anymore. It was sort of based on pictures I had seen of Denny when he was a little younger. So my version of Tot actually was inspired by Denny.
That's so great to hear, man. No, when Denny passed, the 2 people that I reached out to were Devin Grayson and Greg.
Yeah, they were probably the closest to him. Yeah.
And God, it reminds me, Greg is part of my inner circle, and I consider him on the level of my friendships with guys like Bendis and Fraction and stuff.
Same. I talk to Greg once a week.
Oh, that's great. I felt bad, and I don't mind saying this publicly. I had Greg on a few times during COVID, and Greg, I think, kind of felt like I was like over asking him and stuff. And it's like, and I'm like, well, Greg, I always feel like it's just like now, Cole, like it's just a chance for us to talk.
Yeah,
we're on the record, but really it's just a chance to hang out for a minute and stuff. So I felt so bad. I'm like, Greg, I am not going to bother you. If you never come on the show again, that's okay. But I will not let you like jeopardize our friendship. And I wrote Jen and I'm like, hey, I feel horrible. And she's like, Greg's just being Greg. Relax. Everything's going to be fine. And it was.
All of us. I mean, he gets overloaded sometimes and you get.
Well, that's truly, man. He was making the old guard stuff. And I think, and I know how swamped he was and everything. Yeah. And I'm like, so now, no, we're totally cool now. And not that we ever weren't. But yeah, he's like, and even he's like, hey, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, Jesus. You're busy. Yeah. I'm like, hey, it's okay. Oh, that's nice. Michael, I agree, man. Ruck is awesome. I love his angry political rants, but mainly his thoughts on writing. No, he's a genius. And
you should hear him in private. Yeah, no, his political rants are great, and his writing. I mean, nobody knows more about writing than Greg, really. I mean, yeah, he's the man,
Well, and thank God for Denny to bring him to comics because he was killing in novels even then 25 years ago, and it was really a great gift that we got Greg so involved with Batman as we did. Definitely. So, I don't know this answer, Michael. What was the name of the Taylor?
It's the Black Mask special.
Oh, there you go. Oh, Tom Taylor, of course.
Yeah.
Shame on me. There you go. I don't know what it was.
It wasn't a Renee book. It was a Black Mask book that Renee had a very a minor supporting role in.
And was it called Black Mask, or what was the title of it?
Okay. It was a one shot. It was Black Mask.
Sure.
It was part of I can't remember the name of the event that it was part of, but it was back in probably 2019. I think I did it. Fun book. Really,
probably. Maybe a tie into the Birds of Prey movie and everything, or
no, but it was kind of right around that same time frame, but it didn't tie into the movie at all.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun to do. I mean, Tom's great. He's fun to work with.
Alex thinks it might have been the Leviathan event. Sure, maybe it was the Bendis Leviathan event.
I could look it up,
I think that sounds right timing wise.
Yeah.
So yeah. Very cool. Excellent.
It sounds horrible, but sometimes I can't keep the events straight. It's like,
well,
I know what I'm working on when I'm working on it, and then I'm on to something else, and it's just gone out of my head.
Well, much like Convergence wasn't necessarily the greatest event, but we got a lot of really good comics out of it.
Honestly, I looked at it as a way for Greg and I to wrap up our question run, because we kind of didn't get a chance to really do that. So, but the thing about it was also Greg was going through some stuff at the time. I've talked about this before. Renee's father dies in the story, and Greg was going through that in real life when he was writing that. So he was getting that out as it was happening to him. And knowing that, it's like you read that and it's just a heartbreaking story. I mean, it just caught me right there. And I think it's just fantastic. So good. And he really inspired me to up my game. And I think that, I like the stuff. When people ask me if there's any of my own work that I like, which is rare, I always say that my question work with Greg is one of my favorite things that I worked on. And I actually think that those two books, those two Convergence books, are better than our original run, at least as far as my work is concerned. I think I did a better job on those issues than I did on the original run that we did. And cool. The other cool thing was that was the first time I got to work with Marie Javins.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so I got to be friends with her out of that. That was pretty cool.
Excellent. Are there any projects on the horizon you can talk about, or?
Yeah, I'm actually doing a book with Greg right now. I can't talk about it too much because it has not been announced.
Right.
It's a creator-owned series, and we're doing for Image. It's 5 issues to start. And it's if you like our question and stuff, you'll like this. It's a really cool book. I think that we're both doing our bringing our A game on it. So yeah, I mean that's one more, and I'm always doing a lot of covers and that sort of thing. But that's the main thing I'm working on right now.
That's great. I'm not I'm not James. We will leave it to the announcement. If you're correct
it's not King and Country. It's an original.
Okay, there you go. All right, fine.
Yeah, it's something that he and I co-created together.
Because that would, by the way, again, now I'm going to bug Greg. That's a great idea as a sequel to Queen and Country. It would be fun to see a new spy in the field under, God, now I'm blanking on her name. What was her name?
Whose name?
Tara Chase. So, a young new operative.
You're right. Yeah, I didn't hear you. So
yeah, Tara Chase, of course. Yeah.
But I mean, that's who drew that book again? That was
many. Originally, was it Steve? No, it wasn't Steve. Steve was Whiteout.
Steve was Whiteout. Yeah.
Oh God, who did the first?
Wasn't it Leandro Fernandez maybe or something?
I know he did. He did an arc.
Yeah,
and I know Carlos B. McNeil did an arc, and a lot of really great artists did arcs.
Yeah,
but I forget who did first.
He's never asked me to do anything like that, but this is an original thing that he and I came up with together.
There you go, Ralston.
Yeah. Yes,
and yes, Mike Norton indeed did an arc of Queen and Country as well. Absolutely, he did.
Yeah.
So no, it was beyond his Batman work. The first thing I really took notice of Greg's and everything, and also I'm a massive Sandbagger fan. Oh yeah, was it Jason Alexander? And Brian Hurt did one as well, and Leandro, absolutely. And yes, Michael, I already mentioned Carla McNeil, but indeed, absolutely, very cool. Yeah, you see, people remember. Good stuff, man. I've got the script book somewhere for Queen and Country. Now, again, I know he's one of your favorite people. He's one of my favorite people too, Greg.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that's cool. So next week, C2E2. Mm-hmm. Are you doing Terrificon in August?
I am.
Well, we're gonna have to hit the karaoke room again.
Yeah.
So brush up on
your Sinatra bug again, right?
Come on. I already warned Stephanie Phillips, and it's great. She's she and Brian Azzarello were in Chicago, and I'm like, she was doing a signing, and I'm like, well, we got to do karaoke again. She's like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. And I'm like, no way in hell is Azzarello going to come and do karaoke. And he came, and it blew my mind.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah,
he was hilarious. Hilarious. Yeah. So, this is interesting from Michael. Would you ever want to tackle a Western or any other genre?
Sure. I mean, there's always that thing of like, drawing horses. Nobody likes to draw horses, but I mean, I love Westerns as a genre. I would totally do a Western.
I think we need more comic book Westerns, frankly.
I've had a lot of practice drawing hats at this point.
As evidenced by Renee Montoya's lovely fedora. Absolutely.
It's a trilby. It's a trilby.
Excuse me. I appreciate that.
That was another thing that I did was I'm not going to have her in a fedora because it's got a wider brim.
So is the trilby more that Blues Brothers kind of narrower?
Yeah, the 60s kind of style. Sinatra wore a trilby.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
My giant head looks better in a trilby than a fedora. I look like someone trying to be like,
Are you sure that a fedora doesn't look like a trilby on you?
Well, I've worn fedoras, and we had a great a couple of great Chicago hat stores, and it is really hard to find a good hat for this melon. I won't deny it. It's not easy. Mostly Curly Howard newsboy flat top kind of caps. Those look okay on me, but it's a shame. I looked pretty good in the '80s when like Genesis had their working man kind of blue collar look and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sure. Keep telling yourself that, John. Absolutely. So, all right.
In the 80s, I looked like a hair metaler. So it's like I didn't really wear hats.
C2E2 next weekend here in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Terrificon in August. Anything in between? San Diego, whatever.
I am doing San Diego. I think that the Phoenix Fan Fusion is in there. I think Motor City is in there. Heroes Con. Got a few going.
Yeah, man, that's great. Sounds like the dance card is full. Wonderful to hear, man. Beautiful. Well, as always, buddy, I appreciate the conversation tonight, and looking forward to seeing you next weekend. Oh yeah, man.
Thanks everybody for showing up to listen to me blather.
We will have a meal or at least a coffee or something next weekend, I would hope.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. We'll get a bunch of people like last time, and we'll do Miller's Pub again.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
So
that was right before COVID. We did that. That was like the week before COVID.
Last convention standing. I always talk about I was teaching at Columbia College, and I'm driving in to teach on Monday, and they suddenly announce the Doctors and Nurses Convention has been canceled due to the pending, COVID or whatever. And I'm like, oh, sure, let the nerds all get sick, but true. God forbid the doctors and nurses get sick. Thanks a lot. Absolutely.
No, I remember that night very well because it was you, me, Tom King, Mitch Garrett's, Doc Shaner, and you and your buddy. What was the guy's name?
My buddy Jeff. He loved it.
That's right.
Seriously, to this day, Jeff's like, that was amazing. And I'm like,
that was a fun dinner.
I'm like, these are my friends, man. I go, these are the cool friends that I have. Absolutely. Yeah. So, no, I hear you, man. Well, that's the thing. I don't know if Cordo will come out for next weekend, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see who's available and see who wants to.
All right, cool.
Beautiful, buddy. Well, thanks as always, everybody. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm gonna have a lot of fun talking at 2:00 Eastern time, or no, 3:00 Eastern time, 2:00 Central time, and it's this fantastic author that just wrote a great book about Black Panther, and it's done in a dossier format. So it is a prose book, but it's very cool. It looks like you're looking at files from Henry Gritch and I always forget Martin Freeman's character from Black Panther, Black Panther's American intelligence liaison. Yeah. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. But yeah, it's really, and also observations from Shuri and other Wakandans as well. And that's cool. Really, really great book. So we're going to get into Black Panther and Afrofuturism with this author tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern. All right, I got to do the math. 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. So join us for that tomorrow. Otherwise, everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.